Hello, bookish people. Welcome to another episode of the Meet Your Author podcast, where we celebrate African authors and have bookish conversations. I'm your host, Rachel Chiza. I had a fantastic, riveting reading month. I'm excited to share all the books that I loved and some that I DNF'd, did not finish in the month of April. Let's get into it. Or how trivial is a woman's life? If you have no child, you are of no substance to a man. The truth glared right in my face. That if I had told JB about my ruptured cervix after my Mercy's birth, there would certainly have been no marriage. Considering my loneliness and my desperate need to have a man around me, I had done well shutting my mouth. This is a quote from Memoirs of a Mother by Ayeta and Wangusa. Memoirs of a Mother is or was published in 1998. And for me, this quote aptly describes what the book is about, or some of the things that the book explores. It also aptly describes the stacks that have been dealt against women since forever. This was my favorite read from April. I loved everything about it. The autobiographical voice, the fact that the author centers on women and the evolution they're thrust into ready or not, and how they get through it, the demands mounted on women and how they always choose others and never themselves. I loved the tone of the book. I loved the simple writing. This was a mother writing to her daughter and telling her, this is what my life has been like. This is what led me to make all the decisions that I made. And as one who dearly loves her mother, I felt for me this book spoke so many things that maybe my mother and I will never talk about, or we might talk about, but yeah, I loved the exploration of the mother-daughter relationship and also what the mother really went through, that she had a voice to tell her story at a time when women did not have a voice. So I highly recommend this masterpiece. If you're looking for other books to read from Uganda, please read Ayeta and Wangusa's Memoirs of a Mother. You will love it. And fun fact, Ayeta is the daughter of celebrated writer and poet Timothy Wangusa. Professor Timothy Wangusa has contributed greatly to Uganda's literary landscape. I remember we read one of his books, Upon This Mountain, in high school, and so many other books. So yeah, I just thought, you should know. It runs in the blood. Second book that I read is If You Want to Make God Laugh by South African writer Bianca Marais. This was the April read at the Indulgent Bibliophile that's run by Amin, aka the Lip Gloss Mafia. The novel is set in post-apartheid South Africa and explores such harrowing themes, but in a very simple way, and it doesn't water down the themes or the heaviness of them. But as a reader, I felt like I was cushioned. The writing cushioned me, and I really liked that. Otherwise, if it hadn't, then I would have gotten out of the book really, really sad. But yeah, some of the themes that the book explores or interrogates: HIV/AIDS, racism, apartheid, religious abuse, gender inequality, generational trauma, among so many other things. I must say that I was apprehensive when I was getting into the book, and I thought, after reading a few chapters, I thought for me that the tone was off. And one thing I should say is that the author is white South African, so I realized that I had a certain bias. I thought to myself, is she really going to pull it off because she's white South African and apartheid was her ancestors participated in apartheid, so I was feeling a certain way about reading this book by a white South African author. I had to sit with my feelings and examine them Why was I biased? Was it because she was white South African and I thought that she didn't have a right to, talk about Black history in that way? But also in South Africa, it's a rainbow country, so you can't talk about Black South Africans without talking about white South Africans, and then the Indians as well. Like it's a mixture. They'll always be talked about together or side by side. But at the end of the book, I realized that the tone was actually okay. It wasn't off as I had initially thought. During the April book club discussion of the Indulgent Bibliophile, we hosted the author. So we listening to her talking about the book, how it came about, and the questions that we asked that she answered really well. It made me realize that she is a good person if I should judge her by the responses that she gave. And she also took care in writing about her Black characters, but also the history and what was happening at that time. And I think that she should be applauded for that effort. And she should be applauded for that effort. The book is great. I wasn't too crazy about the characters. They're well developed, don't get me wrong, but not memorable for me. The writing was simple, fast-paced, and that's the cushion that allowed me to get through the book quickly, even though it was exploring heavy thematic areas. So I would say if you're looking to read about post-apartheid South Africa, this is a perfect read. Then I went on to read something sunny and romantic, Holding by Alexandria House. It's a sweet and funny rom-com. I loved every bit of it. It's a second chance love trope, and for me, I'm a sucker for those when they happen to other people, but not me. If life gives you another chance with someone who you loved and treated you right, and fall in, and you have your own love story where you live happily ever after. The book narrator made everything even better. He was the icing on the cake. It was narrated by Jacoby DM, and his voice is powerful and everything that I would like to listen to when I wake up in the morning. The writing is brilliant. I like it when I read romance and the novel is exploring so much more other than love. People are going about their lives and then they fall in love, and then I like that. So please listen to Holding or read Holding. Because also in our daily lives, we are always holding space for people, holding space for the people we are romantically involved with, holding space for our siblings, holding space for our mothers, our fathers. We're always holding space for someone. So I hope that even as you're holding space for other people, you're holding space for yourself too, because you matter. The other book that I read is Men of Valor, a series by Kiru Taye, a Nigerian writer. It's a 3-in-1. They're all novellas set in pre-colonial Nigeria. They're love stories. Now, this book reminded me heavily of Nollywood movies. And I think it's because everything I saw about pre-colonial Nigeria, I saw in the movies. When I was reading this, my mind ran to Nollywood and I situated my characters there. But anyway, away from that, the novellas have something for everyone. The stories are beautiful. I loved that the characters in this pre-colonial setting were talking about sex, and they loved sex, especially the women, because I feel like when back then when women are portrayed, they're portrayed as people who are just there to be used, and that never sits well with me. And they always make it seem like it's the men who are out here to enjoy sex, like just give in and all will be well. But with these characters, the women are involved, they're invested. And I'm like, yeah, who runs the world? But yeah, I really, really enjoyed it. And the stories are fast paced. So before you know it, you get through story one and then story two and then story three. I feel like, yeah, that was a good read. A good read. I highly, highly, highly encourage you to read Kiru Taye. I really like her romance. I've talked about some of her books in the previous episode. So if you haven't listened in, listen and try out her work and let me know what you think. I also read Stay in Berlin by Sharon, Abimbola, Salu. It's also a novella about a couple that one partner gets married in absentia, and then they have to move continents for the other partner. And she moves expecting a love-filled reunion, but she's instead faced with a coldness, like the new country she has moved to. She experiences culture shock, obviously, and a stranger in a husband, and a stranger for a husband. What do you expect when you marry a man in absentia? Obviously, he's going to be a stranger. Anyway, so I went into this book thinking that it's romance, and I was hoping for romance, but that was not romance. I don't know what that was. I think it was just a novella telling us, exploring long distance relationships. And it was my fault for going in and thinking I'm going to get romance, because the author did not promise romance. Anyway, also the storyline, the absentia bit reminded me of Pieces, His Only Wife, for those who have read it. I didn't really enjoy Stay in Berlin, but I'm willing to read more of the author's work to see if I'll find anything more from her that I would enjoy. I also read Brooklyn Kings by L.K. Shaw, which is a mafia romance. There are 7 books, each telling a story of diverse people we meet in book one. If you've read like the Bridgerton books, each book is molded after a character that we meet in book one. So it's a similar thing here. And I enjoyed a few of the books. There are characters that are introduced and I'm like, okay, I can't wait to see them fall in love. And then the book is really, really exciting. But all 7 are brilliant. It's just that for me, the parts where it's like, no, that doesn't work for me. One of the other things that I've been wondering about is, what are my feelings around mafia romance? Because people, the mafias are really not the good guys, but they're also the good guys because they're like fighting for the wellness of people, but also they are also promoting some form of disorder. When I was reading the books, I was like, is this normal? Is it normal for you to fall in love with your captor? Is it normal for you to... But again, what's normal? So I had those feelings when I was reading Brooklyn Kings. I'm still trying to figure it out. I think I'm going to have more conversations with friends around it to get their feelings on it. But yeah, if you're looking to try out something raw and dark, not dark, but dark, then Brooklyn Kings is a good getaway. Or the book that I didn't finish, one book, Children of the Revolution by Mengistu Dinar, who is an Ethiopian author. Now, one thing this author does well is capture the helplessness of the character or the protagonist. I could not get past chapter 5. And that's after I've really told myself we need to finish the book. The helplessness in it, I just couldn't. It didn't pick up for me. And I shelved it for another time when I'm ready to dive into that helplessness. Yeah, that's it. Those are the books that I enjoyed in April. you for joining me for this episode. You can now send a voice message to my podcast, Meet Your Author. I'm going to put the link in the chat box so that you are able to send me your thoughts, your views. Tell me about the books that you're reading and what you thought about the books that I read in April. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast, follow at AuthorMate on X and Instagram at meetyourauthor_podcast for a bookish ride. Share and tag the podcast handles across the social media platforms and let me know what you think. But also you can follow me on my personal platforms at RachelK29 on X and Instagram.